Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Pillow Fight Podcast. I'm Alyssa.
I'm Kay.
And I'm Emma.
And we are your three besties here to keep you in the loop with all things horror.
Now, we are back this week with another exciting installment in our Haunted Attractions series. And today, we have a special guest.
You'll know him from such works as Leatherface, Hulu's Light as a Feather, and this week's movie, Hellfest. He's a screenwriter, producer, and he penned a handy-dandy workbook called The Scary Movie Writer's Guide that you can find on Amazon. Let's welcome a very dear friend of mine, Seth M. Sherwood.
I didn't realize it was about attractions. I thought it was because I was hauntingly attractive.
That too.
That's
Okay.
just how we bring it. That's your
All right.
line and sinker right there.
On
Right,
my
what you
business
needed to
card.
read.
Age, sex, location.
Yes.
ASL, motherfucker. Before we get into Hellfest, we do have a few questions that we
Okay.
like asking everybody. First off, do you remember the first scary movie that you ever saw?
Yes. And when I get asked this, I seem to always give a different answer because it seems to change because I have different memories at different times. The biggest one that freaked me out was my dad was watching The Dead Zone and I was supposed to be sleeping and I was peeking out around the corner. And it just so happened to be in the scene where somebody got their shirt ripped open and there were breasts and a knife. And it fucked me up because we lived in this small town in Eastern Washington in a valley and there's all these rock formations and there's one called Castle Rock. And our street, one block over, was called Castle Rock. And I had no idea that this was a whole Stephen King Maine thing. I just heard Castle Rock and I'm like, that's the next block over. I'm going to get killed.
Oh.
So that was, yes, that was a big one. And around the same time, my father, who is clearly irresponsible, took me to see both The Elephant Man, which is not a horror movie, but
yeah.
when you're 5, hits you like a horror movie.
Yeah.
And also about that same time, my dad and my aunt went to see Dressed to Kill at a drive-in. I'm supposed to be asleep in the back, and I look up to see the elevator scene.
Ooh, that one's so good.
And watching it now, it's not that scary, but just the door opening and closing on the arm
Oh, gosh.
with the blood got me. And I thought, oh, look, there's a movie with kids. I'm going to look this way. And this movie, also a horror movie, and I didn't, I only this year found this horror movie again, and I'm going to forget the name now. But it's on, I think it's on Tubi or Shudder, but it's Radioactive Kids, and they turn you into a skeleton when they hug you. And I just had that image in my head for 1,000 years, and I just this year rediscovered what that was.
I thought you were about to say, I just this year got over it.
I did haunting nightmares for 40 years. Yeah,
gosh.
killing me.
Terrifying.
That's probably a really long answer. I apologize.
No, it's
No.
perfect.
Well, and I love seeing those type of things where you're like, this terrified me as a kid. And then all of a sudden you're like, that's it. Like I had someone who was bothering me all day the other day, just being like, it's a movie with a pumpkin and the pumpkin tips its vines and it eats a lady. And I'm like, dude, I got no idea, but now I want to see it. I want to find this. He's like, I think it came out in the 90s.
Is it the Return to Oz?
Yeah, that sounds like that.
Okay, I know I will not rewatch that movie. That movie is terrifying.
That movie's terrifying.
Added to the list.
100%
Absolutely
terrifying.
not. That is like scar. That I don't know. Something about that movie gives me like an inside.
This is a kids movie. Here's a room full of heads.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Everything that movie, man.
someone who made that movie hated children.
So who was your first horror crush?
Oh. It was probably, it's funny because my first celebrity crush ever was Christina Applegate because she was like the only metal girl on TV in Married with Children.
Understand.
But in a similar way, the and I'm going to be a monster and forget her name, but in Dream Warriors, the girl who fantasizes her dream self as being punk rock. Like,
My dreams are beautiful.
yeah.
And bad.
Yeah.
She looked great.
She did.
Yes.
Okay. Well, those are our normal questions. So moving on, what is your screenwriting origin? How did it all begin?
It was I moved to LA in 99 to go to grad school for prose writing. And at the time I'd spent all my energy spending like 2 years in grad school writing my thesis novel. I finally finish it and it ends up bearing a crazy similarity to 6 Feet Under, which comes out like a month after I graduate. And I'm in LA. I can't afford to move home because that's the LA trick, is that you move here and then you can't afford to leave, but you also can't afford to live here.
Yep.
And I knew enough people on the periphery of the industry that were saying like, well, maybe you should try writing screenplays. And I thought, well, it took me 2 years to write a book. I could probably knock out a screenplay in a couple months. So I wrote one and it was terrible, and I wrote another one and it was terrible. And then I really got into that, and I wanted to buy like a mini DV camera and go make a horror movie like everybody else was. I didn't, but I kept writing them, and I just kept, I did that thing where everyone says in screenwriting, it takes you 5 or 6 scripts to get really good. And just through me being really insecure and self-flagellating and just not liking what I was doing, I think I wrote 5 or 6 before I finally started to show them to people. And then after a few years of doing that, you live in town, people eventually start getting read. And this is like a 10-year journey. It did not happen quick. Or over that period of 10 years, I was writing, slowly getting read. And then eventually I landed on the Blood List, which is a screenplay competition that just folded last year, but ran for a good like 13 years or so. And it was similar to the Blacklist, if screenwriting at all, but their thing was to take screenplays that were being read in the industry, but were not produced and were not represented, and then come out with a list around Halloween time that says, hey, everybody read these. And then the person who ran the list, Kaylee Marsh, she was a junior exec, so she would send them off to other people and they read them. So I had a script that landed on there. And then Kaylee became a manager and started to rep me. And I'd always been a horror nerd, but I was writing other stuff as well. But then once the person who rang the Blood List became my manager, I'm like, well, I really need to double down and write more horror scripts, because people ask her for scripts. And if she's repping me, then she'll give them my scripts. So I started doing that. She started sending me on generals. And then another year or two goes by until eventually like the generals I had started paying off. People started inviting me to pitch on things. And that's what eventually landed me Leatherface, which was like my first thing. Not my first job, but the first one that was not something obscure and that actually got made. And that was like a crazy, weird process. And I quit the day job. It's like the thing that you want to happen is where you get paid money to write a horror script, and you quit your day job and you go on location, and then the next year rolls around and nothing happens and you go broke, and and then you kind of start the process over again. And those bookings just get a little closer and closer until you pull together some sort of life doing that. And I've stayed at just short of like big studio films, but above micro budgets. I've just stayed in this middle horror ground for about 10 years now. 10, 12 years. I'm 1,000 years old.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had to clock in an office in 12 years. So that alone, I mean, I'm not like, I don't have a mansion or anything, but I'm alive and almost surviving. And
you're doing your art, you're doing what you love, and you're making a living out of it. That's
so to
awesome.
answer your question, I was an overnight discovery with Leatherface. It just took 10 years and nobody saw it.
That's a great,
It's a war of attrition. That's why I tell people, anybody who wants to write, is it like just getting plucked out of obscurity, making $1 million and getting full control of a movie. It just doesn't happen, except for 1 or 2 people who you find out 10 years later are shitty and probably had a rich uncle.
Nepotism.
Yeah, gotta love it.
Well, you have a lot of experience writing for the teen girl characters, the younger females, the youths. But what's your process for writing a character that's different from your own life experience?
Well, I mean, at my core, I'm a 14-year-old goth girl. I mean, I've never quite, I think it's because when I was a kid, I was devouring horror films, but I was also identifying with final girls because they were far more common than final guys. And I read so many books, especially things like Goosebumps that are here on the table. These are I was reading these when I was a little too old to be reading them.
You're never too old.
I know. But these and Choose Your Own Adventure books and other things. And I read Vampire Diaries when I was in high school, like long before it was a TV show. And so many of the books that just because I wanted to read about vampires and spooky things, they almost always had female characters and they're almost always teenagers. So that just seemed to be like such an integral part of horror DNA to me. Even though I've spread out from it and moved away from it, that always just seems to come back to that. And I don't always support the idea of, writing in a space that's not your own. So I never try to approach any story that I've approached where there's things like periods or anything that's like inherently feminine. Like I generally work with female writers as well. Like I think you guys all know BJ and I wrote a script together. We had women on the writing staff for Light as a Feather. So I try not to own spaces that aren't mine. But for teen stuff specifically, there's so many things that are just universal. When you're a teenager, it's like you have your first job. It's usually the first time you fall in love. You get your first car. Like anything major that happens to you for the first time happens when you're a teen. And I think that's sort of universal. And that and angst, teen angst are relatively universal. So I tend to just like tap into that. And weirdly, I'm also the kind of person who like every video game where you can make your own character, I always make women. Just because it's not what I'm used to seeing. And I always just like seeing what I don't always see or what I think works really well. So I for whatever reason, and I it's also the projects that I have that have been made and have happened tend to be the ones with female characters. I've got some dude stuff. I've got like a total himbo bro script about frat dudes in a haunted fraternity house.
Yes.
Yeah. Tales from the Crypt style.
Jim Tan haunting.
Yep.
So you mentioned both choose your own adventure and video game characters.
Yeah.
I loved The Devil in Me.
Oh my God, thank you.
I did not make everyone survive, but
Neither. I didn't even
It's
know what I'm
hard.
supposed to do, and I still couldn't do it.
yeah, a choose your own adventure about H.H. Holmes or inspired by H.H. Holmes. Yes, it's with the Dark Pictures anthology. It's a choose your own adventure about an H.H. Holmes inspired killer, and they go to make a documentary on the house and stabby. Spoilers, but
People die.
yes, unless you're really, really good. Can you talk a little bit about how the difference between making a movie script versus a video game script and it being a choose your own adventure where you had to have so many different multiple endings?
Yeah, it's I can't take full credit for it because the Supermassive, the people who made the game, they'd already made like Until Dawn, which is the most famous of that series. And it's they build their game around the choices. So when they came to me, they knew who the characters were and they knew what the basic choices were. And they showed me this map. And it was like a chart of nodes. Like you'd have a node here with a line to this node, and then it would split, and then it would get bigger and bigger and split off like a hierarchy of sorts, and then it would pinch back down, and then it would go back out and pinch back down. And each one of these nodes is a scene. And so they had planned a lot of it for me, but then they're like, we know in this scene, these two characters are here and we need to get to this story point. Or they find this object because it's a game, but they left the characterizations to me. They left like the scene building. And so I basically, it was almost like someone had already done like a very detailed outline for me. And then my part was to go in and write all the dialogue, really make the characters into like people based. They just are like, this one is the sound girl who has an attitude problem. This is the new girl who does this. So we knew who the people were, but I got to give them the voice and sort of their characterizations. And then again, since they planned it all out, I would get to a scene and I'd write it, and then I'd know I have to rewrite this scene 4 different ways depending on who's alive at this point. So there's a lot of rewriting the same scenes over and over again, slightly changing up the point of view or who was there. And then you write the different endings, and it's just a giant chart, and you have to like line it all up. And I think at the end of the day, it was like a 600-page script. And it just came out last year, I think, like about a year ago.
I think 2022.
What did it? Jesus, what year is? Yeah, 2 years ago.
It was during.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Because I've played all of them, but that's the last one. That's the most recent in the Dark Pictures anthology, because after that was the Quarry.
Yes. And it took a long time to make because I wrote that. That was my pandemic job where I was holed up during lockdown and just working on that. So it took him a long time to do the mocap and capture the performances of the facial actors and do all the voices. And it was a lot of fun, and I really hope I can do it again. But that method has sort of gotten into my brain, and I'm actually trying to write like a throwback style horror choose your own adventure book now, but using that same sort of node map method.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. But I haven't been able to get to the good ending that I wrote.
I want to know what because I only played through one so far, but that's what's the best thing about that game is you replay it, and you're going to find new endings.
There's 5 or 6. Yeah. I just got someone emailed me the other day randomly on Instagram, mad at me about there's one option you could take where there's a dog where the dog doesn't survive, and someone is mad about it.
Hey, why did you email him?
It wasn't me, but for a second I was like,
She's like, wait,
I know.
did it?
Because that's the first thing I do when I see it. I'm like, oh no.
Just be nice to the dog. If you be nice to a dog in a video game, it always pays off.
Yeah.
So I know you write a lot of projects like on spec that aren't your choice of subject matter, but when it comes to your own projects,
Mhm.
what inspires you?
Ooh, my brain is just chaos and tapioca. It just holes everywhere. I think that the way I sort of come up with stuff is I always call it a story molecule, where it starts with atoms. It's just like this type of person, this location, this kind of setup. I see something in a movie and I'm like, that could have been done so much better. Or I see like a terrible movie and I'm like, if you would have done it this way, that could have been great. Or I see a good movie that misses an avenue I didn't like, or I read something. I constantly am inspired. I have a list every day I have I add to this list in my phone of just random little things. Like, what if this type of person had a missing finger or whatever, whatever it is, just random weird little thoughts. And they just sort of float there. And eventually they start to glom onto each other until eventually this character idea matches with this location idea, matches with this story idea. Or sometimes it's like more of a need. I recently realized that there's this really cool standing set in the valley here that's like a spaceship, like a very 80s,
Oh,
you know what I'm
yeah.
talking about, at Laurel Canyon Studio. It's like a spaceship set, but a very 80s low budget, like Roger Corman sci-fi movie
Ooh.
set. And you could own that thing for 2 weeks for 60 grand. What? So I'm like, could I write a script that entirely takes place on a shitty spaceship?
Yes.
You know, because if I can magically pull 60 grand out of my ass, I'm like, I could go make that movie. But it's a lot of times it's things like that, or things that I haven't seen that I want to see, which is kind of hard because with spec work and trying to sell it, I've only sold one spec script in 12 years. But every time I write one, it gets me writing assignment work, which is the bulk of my career. And it's like you need something original as a spec to be like, people to be like, oh my God, this script really stands out. I don't want to make it though, because no one else is making that kind of movie. And now, so I'm scared because execs live for keeping their jobs. So they're very risk adverse. They want it just different enough, but not too different.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of times it's me wanting to see a thing that doesn't exist. But then of course, if it doesn't exist at all, then no one's going to take a risk on it and make it. But they might read it and then hire me to write the movie they already want to make, which is the most common thing that happens. But I get ideas everywhere. I mean, and I think a lot of times when people ask me, how do you get your ideas? It's people who want to write and they're like, I don't have ideas. Where to get them? And my douchebag answer is, I don't know how to not have ideas. I seriously have like 5 or 6 a day, and they're not all good. A lot of them are trash, or a lot of them have already been done. But the weirdest things. Anything, they could come from anywhere. Music, traffic jams, hot dogs. Like
not
it could
douchey
really
at
be.
all.
It could really just come from anywhere.
That's great. It's better to have ideas than to not, I would say.
Yeah.
No
Yes.
matter how
Yeah.
crazy or outrageous.
I mean,
it is.
I won't live long
Yeah.
enough to like make them all into a
Right.
thing. But like, hopefully, the good ones come to the top of the tapioca brain.
The tapioca brain.
Well, I mean, I'm going to watch this music traffic jam hot dog movie that you have coming out.
It's
Sounds amazing. You mentioned already that you got a major boost from the now sadly defunct Bloodlist.
yes.
What advice would you give to other up and coming horror screenwriters and breaking into the industry?
Like as of today, right now, it's really hard to say because the industry is at probably the bleakest it's ever
Right.
been. With streaming imploding. Basically, if you don't know, what happened was, short version is, after the strikes last year with the Writers Guild and the Actors Guild, Screen Guild, it was sort of the companies were all sort of forced to admit that streaming was not profitable. Because basically everyone was striking over the fact that they weren't getting paid streaming residuals, and companies were all telling their shareholders, look at this amazing, great thing we're doing. And now finally it's, clear that it's not a model that necessarily makes money. Apparently putting things out onto home video after theatrical and cable release was profitable, and we broke everything. So now there's a major retraction going on where no one's spending money. Indie films aren't getting financed, aren't getting insured, because no one knows what the outlets for those movies are at this point, because theatrical hasn't rebounded and streamings are just falling apart left and right. So the one thing you can do is write. I mean, like there's absolutely nothing stopping you from writing and writing good stuff. And I kind of believe if you are involved in some sort of either online community or you're in Los Angeles of filmmakers and you're writing, it's impossible for you not to get read unless you're not sharing it. Like you have to put yourself out there. And you should be writing things and either making things yourself or hooking up with people who can make things. The one thing that's amazing about horror is that it seems to weather a lot of the implosions and recessions in Hollywood because there is a pipeline and an audience for smaller budget things. Because we love things that are terrible. I mean, not, and I mean that in the most loving way. For most people, there's good movies and there's bad movies. For horror people, there's like good, bad, bad, good. Yes, and a good horror story can ascend a bad budget very easily. And there's things like Screenbox, there's things like Shudder. Obviously Shudder's not buying the way they used to buy, but there's still pipelines and outlets for horror that don't exist for other genres. And it's why studios, whenever there is like a recession or a retraction, will always go to making a low budget horror film, because at the end of the day, you can never not see how Paranormal Activity made a bajillion dollars.
Right.
Or Barbarian or Smile. Smile is a good example of Parker, the guy who made those, was like the rest of us, where he was maxing out his credit cards and making a short every year and did it for a decade until one finally hit, and somehow had the best lawyer ever that he got to write and direct the feature version. But horror, I would say, is weathers these things better than most other genres. Yeah. So just writing it, if you're concerned with breaking in, that's you're putting your energy in the wrong place. You need to be putting your energy into actually writing the scripts and then writing another script, because you can't break in with just one script. You need to have multiple scripts that are representative of what you can do. The Blood List is gone, but there's still other screenplay competitions and tracking boards that you could submit to. Do your research. It's dangerous to badmouth them because, but there's a lot of them out there that are just kind of like, we'll read your script for $50 and maybe we'll put it up on our website.
Yeah.
Enter this competition for $100 and maybe we'll tell you how we feel about it, but probably not. Do your homework, see what sort of, look at people who are writing similar things to you or people who you'd want to emulate the career of, see what their successes were, or just look at the competitions themselves and see who and what has come out of those. And if it's gone somewhere and done something, in which case it might actually be worth the time and the money. But ultimately that comes down to how much money you're willing to spend. But there are legit competitions out there that help you get noticed or help you get connected. But at the beginning of the day, you just need to be writing.
Yeah.
If you're not writing and you're concerned with how you're going to make movies, it's something about a cart before a horse. I forget how it goes.
No, that's great advice. Simple, but very effective.
How did you come to be part of Hellfest? I mean, you've got some pretty heavy hitters involved. You got Galen Hurd producing, Gregory Plotkin, who directed it, but he's known for being a pretty epic editor.
Yeah.
Bear McCreary, Akela Cooper, also writing with you.
Yeah.
You got Tony fucking Todd.
Yeah.
Was this a project that you went into and this is going to be a banger, or when you got into it, they're like, please help us fix this?
That's how it started. Basically, if you've seen the movie and you look at the credit screen, it's written by about 5,000 people. That's not fully true for what's on screen. There was a script, and that was written on spec that Galen Hurd's company, Valhalla, Galen Hurd, who does Walking Dead and all of James Cameron's good movies. That I don't know.
And she's just a badass.
And she's a badass. Yeah, she is like this tall and so terrifying. She's so intense.
It's always
gave me the hardest notes I've ever had in my life, but once I cracked them, were like the best thing. She's amazing.
I want to be here when I grow up.
Oh my god, I want to be here when I grow up. She's so fucking cool. So yeah, her company got the script, but they couldn't get it greenlit with any producing partners because it just wasn't, for whatever reason. Not that it was good or bad. It's just, getting movies isn't necessarily a good or bad thing. It's where are our tax initiatives? What do we have access to? Who's willing to make this? Who's willing to be in it? So for whatever reason, that script didn't work. So they had a second script commission just based on the concept. Same story. That one didn't work as well. And a third one made, and they're like, we kind of like parts of this, but this one is also structurally happening. This one was actually written by someone not credited, but story-wise, it just didn't work for whatever reason. And they were like, we need to start over. We have this concept. We need to start fresh. So I was technically I think the fourth start from scratch. And in the meantime, I was already working with Valhalla because we'd sold a show. And the way this works is, like I said, you write a spec, your agents take it out. I had written a couple different pilots. 2 different execs at our company had read different pilots, and they realized there were 2 different people reading me. So they invited me in. You have a general meeting, which is generally to make sure that you're not a crazy person and they would be willing to like work with you and you're not going to be a pain in their ass. And then they say, we love this thing you wrote, but we're not going to make it because it doesn't work for our slate, our budgets, what we have access to, our mandate, whatever. And they say to me, people really want a new horror show from Gale, TV show. We were thinking like a retro one. Do you have anything like that? And I'm lied. And I'm like, yeah,
You're like,
duh, that's all I do. It's like I went home over the weekend and beat my brain against the wall to come up with something. And then on Monday, I was like, oh yeah, here's that thing I said I totally had. And then that ended up working. I spent like a year developing it with them. We sold it to UCP, which is Universal's television production arm at the time. But then we couldn't find a home for it. Sci-Fi took a year to say no. It was too horror-y for USA. Like all the Universal channels didn't want it. And so Amazon was like, seemed like they were super interested in the room, and we were expecting like a phone call to be like, we want it. And then they said no. And it was good because I got to go basically to every major TV outlet in town with Gail Ann Hurd and pitch an idea and be associated with her, and now know these people who all said, hey, come back and pitch anytime. But we just couldn't ever actually find a home for it. And that's happened to me multiple times. I've sold like 3 pilots that just ultimately couldn't find a place to live and get made. A lot of my career is like not on IMDb because things happen. I spent an entire year on a project, get paid for it, but it just doesn't show up. So anyway, so we had this, and this, when it was all said and done, I emailed Gail, and I'm like, look, I really appreciate like all the time and energy you put in this, like for someone like you to throw your weight behind it. I super, appreciate that. And she's like, look, it took me 6 years to get Walking Dead on the air. She's like, it's not over till it's over. And then the next day she emailed me again. She's like, we do have this one movie that we've been trying to get greenlit for a few years that we can't just get. Would you be willing to read it and take a crack at it? And that was Hellfest. So I read all the scripts and thought it was great. And at that point, the lovely, weird, amazing Jennifer Lynch was actually the director. Mm-hmm. And so I pitched them a thing and they liked it. And then Jennifer and I got together for a few days. This is like the dreamy part of being a screenwriter. It's like the second we would go on that. She was shooting in the middle of shooting something in New York. So they fly me out, put me up in the same hotel as her. And like when she's off from the show, we like just sit in a hotel room and like work together. And I get to become new best friends with Jennifer Lynch. It was awesome. The studio flies you first class. It just ruins the rest of your life. That 1 week where a studio treats you amazingly.
Yeah.
So she and I developed this whole take on it, but then her TV schedule was just too much. And they'd met with Greg a few times, and I had been on, for Paranormal Activity 4, whatever one he directed, I was up for that, and I was his choice, but the studio picked the guys who had actually ended up writing it. So he and I just started, and we had a Blumhouse movie that never happened together. Things don't happen.
Did you guys do a short film?
We did do a short film. We did the weird, it was that weird point in time where VR seemed like it was going to be a lot bigger than it was. And this company had invented this rig of 12 GoPros in a circle to record that they would put in the middle of the space and record. And then that would be the camera you put on. And then he was friends with a bunch of people at the Stan Winston studio. So we made like a horror short VR film. And you couldn't even, it was literally like a 360-degree camera. And the conceit we came up with was like you're a kidnapped victim. So when you put on the goggles, like you've been kidnapped by a cult, and the action unfolds like 360 around you. So you can turn and look at whatever you want. Oh. And like Greg had to literally like hide in a box in part of the set with like peeping through a hole because you can't direct because it literally sees everything. Oh my gosh. But yeah, so they said, why not Greg? And then Greg became the director, and he and I did a draft together, and that's when it finally got greenlit. I think that was a really long answer to a simple question. But the answer is that's what it takes for a movie to happen, is that like a bunch of people wrote drafts that didn't work for whatever reason. I come on, write a draft with one director, then a new director comes on another draft, probably. And then once we knew what the budget was and we knew we were going to start shooting, I did another draft. And then at that point I'd gone on to Light as a Feather. So Akela came on to do a pass after they cast it, because they ended up casting it a little older than what I had originally written. So she sort of rewrote it for older characters. And then when they started shooting, I was still on Light as a Feather. So Blair Butler, who's also awesome, came on and did sort of like the on-set stuff, or the stuff that they were doing right when they were going to start shooting. And then after they shot and they were going to do reshoots and new ending, then they rehired me to come back later to write a new beginning and a new ending that they were going to reshoot here in town. So that's what it takes for a mid-level $5 million horror movie to actually come together. And I'm super proud of it, and it was super fun. And thankfully, Akela and Blair and I are all like super friendly and help each other. And when the crazy like arbitration went on, because there were 5,000 writers, they were both cool enough to say, yeah, that's 90%, 80%, 90% of what's on screen is what Seth wrote. We were polishing. So, and it does not hurt me to share credit with Akela. So
No, she has had a great few years.
Yeah.
Malignant and Megan.
Wow.
No, it's funny because like we emailed and we were friends on social. I didn't meet her until the writers' strike last year. So you can have a co-writer on a movie and not actually meet them until you're like at a premiere or on strike together.
On strike, yeah.
Love on the picket lines.
Exactly.
It was, yeah. Picket lines I made so many friends.
Hellfest came out around the same time as a lot of other haunt movies came out.
Yeah.
You know, Bloodfest, Haunt, all of those. Were you all aware of each other? Was there like a race?
We
to
were.
go first?
Haunt was completely below the radar. No one knew what Eli Roth was up to. Bloodfest we knew of because the trailer came out really, really early. And mostly we were concerned with that just because of the similarity in the title. That movie's totally different. I mean, it's kind of haunty, but it's not really.
Okay.
Haunt was more, I would say, a spiritual cousin. It's just more pointed and condensed.
Right.
So we weren't super worried. The fact that for the last 3 or 4 months, Amazon has been accidentally showing Haunt when you try to watch Hellfest. That affects my royalties, so that's a little more of a irritation. But I actually like Haunt. I think Haunt's a fun movie.
As horror fans, when we watch Hellfest, we could see how similar it is to some of the haunted attractions, even if it's an even better, even more fantastical version of the haunts and local haunts that we would get to go to. Are you a fan? Are you a fan?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that my ex-wife and I got married at Not Scary Farm on Halloween night in 2004 or something like that.
Whoa.
Jesus, that was 20 years ago. I've always been a fan of both the theme parks. Back when I first moved to LA, there was a great yard haunt in Burbank here, Babcock House, which was on Babcock, kind of by over.
I think I know what you're talking.
It was over kind of by where the Brady Bunch house is.
Oh yeah.
And it was a guy, it was like an ex-Imagineer from Disney who did projected ghosts in his front yard. And that was the first yard haunt I went to when I'd moved to LA. So I was like 99, 2000. And I'm like, is this what LA is at Halloween time?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's sort of what started it. So I've never laid off. My personal favorite is Reign of Terror in Thousand Oaks, which takes you a half hour to walk through, which is amazing. I was a fan. And when we were making the movie, the studio paid for me to go to every single one in LA. My gosh. Which was amazing. But as I was saying before, it makes life horrible now to have to spend my own money to get VIP treatment at Universal. But yes, huge fan of the haunts. And I don't think, the idea of the concept of Hellfest isn't super original, because how many of us haven't been in a haunt and been like, what if that dude actually stabbed me?
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what the core scary thing is. It's fake, but jump scares are legit. And that was the hard thing to do, is like someone who hears some horror fans constantly, like, jump scares. And I'm basically writing a movie that's 90% jump scares because that's the nature of a haunt. But yes, big fan.
All right, well, before we get into the movie, let's talk the Scary Movies Writer's Guide. Tell us about how it came about. And
it came about because I was on strike and I was watching my savings account rapidly deplete. And that's where it started. But really what happened was during the strike was I started getting a better sense of community, which I'd never had before with other screenwriters. I didn't really go to union events, and I know a lot of horror people here in LA, as we all do. And I'm sure I'm not speaking out of turn to say that everyone knows each other. The night of your wedding, everybody was at one of two events. It was either at Mick Garris's last podcast or at your wedding.
Or
Like,
pretty much both.
yeah,
Like,
or some people went back.
That's pretty awesome.
and Charles Band got married the same
Oh,
day.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So there is a community, and I love it, but I've also been frustrated by it at times because it does get clicky and weird. And there's lots of people who are friendly when they think you can help them out, and then go and vanish when you can't.
It's always so fun.
We all know the same people. We all know who the guilty people are. We all know who we really want to keep buttering up.
So
we
you
know.
fucking listening, everybody.
Anyway, the sense of community I sort of started, that I've always sort of struggled with the horror community, I started finding a little bit more of on the picket line. And I did a thing that I had sort of avoided doing for the longest time, which is I'm going to lean into a social media, which I don't love to do, but I hadn't done it. And I'd known enough people who'd gotten jobs off of being on Twitter. And I'm like, if there's a time to do it, I have the time to do it. I'm now. So I really just made Twitter my job for a few months. And went from having a couple hundred friends following me to a few thousand people. And I'm like, well, I guess this is an audience. And I started tweeting specifically, like 1,000,001 out of work screenwriters were tweeting screenwriting advice, but no one was doing it specific to like their thing. I'm like, no one was talking about horror itself.
Right.
So I just started tweeting specifically on writing horror films. How do you motivate a monster? How do you pick what sort of subgenre of horror? What type of horror movie is it? What's the point of view of a slasher? Like just things that were just more pointed and specific.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I posted one of these little threads, my following would double or triple like within a few days. And I was like, oh my God, I found the secret to social media. And then once I hit around 5,000 people, I'm like, well, clearly everyone will buy this book. It was enough people were asking like, are you writing these down? And I started a Substack and I put them down. And then at the same time, since I couldn't write movies, I was working on, I was going back to my roots and writing little just horror prose short stories. And like my roots, even before I was writing, I went to art school to be a designer. And like in the 90s, I was like cutting up my Fangoria magazines and making zines for my friends in punk bands in Portland. Those staying up all night at Kinko's making stuff. And I was like, I really tried to get back in touch with that. So I started doing like the kind of art I did back then, when I started drawing on top of photos and going back to like when I used to just doodle on top of Xeroxes and trying to recreate that. And so just in my head, I'm like, I've seen a bunch of screenwriting books and they're usually kind of boring. And the thing that really did it was I would listen to a podcast of somebody else who was just talking about like scams online. Like if you see somebody selling you their get rich scheme, it's already stopped working for them. So now they're selling it to you for their profit. And someone said, I wish I could remember who to attribute to them, but they said that information is no longer a premium. It's the delivery and application of information is where the money's at. So I thought like, how can I make screenwriting advice for horror actionable? And that's what led to me making the book as a workbook, where you could start at the beginning and start filling in the blanks and checking off boxes. It will build an outline for you. So by the time you get to the end of the book, you have an outline that you could go in for a script. And in the meantime, I do all my gross little monster like artwork and sketches and in the corners and have fun with it. And it's been about a year since I put it out, and I've sold I think 1,200 copies. I saw like a few. I had a huge jump right when it first came out, and if I was better at marketing and if I could make sense of Facebook's ad system.
It's a really good book. I mean, I haven't
Thank you.
I haven't used it because I don't want to mess it up. Just like like the art in it's really cool. It's I've read a lot of horror screenwriting books, and this one, it's like Dan O'Bannon for like the core knowledge and you for making it make sense.
That's good company.
So.
Thank you.
I love it.
It's just the idea of being actionable and asking questions and making people fill in blanks. There's a few flow charts in there. Do you want to write a movie about this or this? Are you into this or this? Does this bug you? Or it goes back to that question. I was like, how do you get your ideas?
Yeah.
So I tried to make the book like, how do you farm ideas from your own brain? Right. And if you don't need to do that, you can just jump ahead in the book. Like each chapter is sort of like a different part of the process.
I want this book.
It's $15 on Amazon.
Thank you.
The Scary Movie Writer's Guide. You can go to scarywriter.com, follow the links. I'll send you a picture so you can pop it up at this point.
Yes,
Please do. Well, on that note, I think we are ready to dive right into 2018's Hellfest. Are you ready
Yay.
to join us?
Yes, because I get a royalty, right? Because every time
yes.
someone
Yeah.
sees it, I get at least 3 cents.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the deal.
Awesome.
On Halloween night, 3 young women and their respective boyfriends head to Hellfest, a ghoulish traveling carnival that features a labyrinth of rides, games, and mazes. They soon face a bloody night of terror when a masked serial killer turns the horror theme park into his own personal playground.
Who wrote that? That was great.
That's the official synopsis
Really?
on the internet.
Mr.
News to me. Somebody in a marketing department somewhere crushed that one.
Good job. Good job. Okay, so we are diving right into this now. If you have not seen Hellfest, turn this off. Go watch it. It is on
Shudder.
It's on Shudder
Amazon.
and Amazon. You can find it streaming. Watch it. Come back and let's get into it.
Also, actually available on DVD.
Well, there you go. Yeah, get some
Physical.
physical media.
Seth, where do you make the most money?
Yes.
I think DVDs the
So-
least amount.
Buy a hard copy. Support.
I have a kid in college.
There
He
you go.
eats
Help
so much.
fund.
Help fund the dorm food.
Listen, it's not easy.
He's not getting VIP tickets to Hellfest.
Right.
All right. Well, so our movie, we start with a Scream type of cold opening. We see a girl running through the haunt, getting it.
Oh
Like,
yeah. It does not mess around in the beginning, which I love. And I love the shot of her just hanging at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, ooh, I love that kind of opening.
I love that. You say,
Thanks, Seth.
Sure.
yeah, I love when you see like the title card come up and you're just like, all right, yeah, I'm here for
Like,
Hellfest.
Oh yeah. They're not messing around. They're not messing around with this one.
I'm pretty sure that was a Kayla.
Oh,
I think
well,
that is-
Taylor,
but it's fine.
good job.
I have no problem saying when Kayla's.
Kayla.
Yeah.
Just check
She's
off
amazing.
which-
She's amazing.
Yeah, it was a good call.
And I do a little, we like all we get is the creepy song and a lot of the views of the mask that we're seeing our dude. But other than that, it would just be a normal everyday day at the haunt.
Yeah.
Except for you don't make it to the end of the maze.
Mhm.
The humming Pop Goes the Weasel was a studio note, which I don't like. They wanted to make sure you could track that it's the same guy later,
Okay.
which I did through a little scuff in the boot, which was very clear.
I was gonna say, is it from his cute shoes?
Oh, yeah, exactly. But the studio felt like they needed something more on point to like oversell it.
Trust the
It's a great example of a studio note.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we move right along. We meet our characters, Natalie, Brooke, and Taylor. Natalie and Brooke are OG homies. And then Brooke and Taylor are new college friends. And
Besties, according to Bex.
Yeah,
well,
they're-
according to Taylor.
there's some serious like drama behind these ladies.
Yeah.
Like they are not down to bro.
Well, if you have your college is a different time, you go your different ways. And when you have your old friend versus the new one they met, it's kind of like, hey, sup? Pissing contest. What do you vote? I've been there.
It really is too, because she's just like, is she coming? I didn't think she was gonna be here.
She doesn't even
Did
like
they-
horror.
No, did they just meet there? Like they knew
I think
each other?
I think the
or-
idea was that they knew each other and they were aware of each other, but
it was just
with
yeah.
Natalie being gone, it wasn't the relation, the depth of the friendship between the other two hadn't become like super aware of
Yeah.
her.
Mhm.
And that was actually through most of my drafts, we'd always sort of intended the friends to sort of be this like awkward triangle.
Okay.
Originally it would have been the first draft, I believe it was, I can't remember what her name was originally, but the character that became Natalie, she was the one that was sort of like the hybrid friend, like friends with the two people who didn't like each other. And then we shifted it at some point because I think it was better for her character to be on the outside a little bit. So when she comes back feeling like a little bit of an outsider and not into the horror stuff, that served it better.
Okay.
The other thing I love to say about them is the characters changed a lot from draft to draft to draft. Taylor was intended to be a lesbian originally with a crush on Natalie that was uncredited because Natalie was straight.
Okay.
I don't know
Okay.
who at some point got afraid of that,
I could see
but
that.
Bex known for playing
Right.
lesbian characters at the time, was kind of cast for that reason. And they later said that they'd always super duper wanted to play like a slutty girl in a horror film.
Okay.
So they
Well,
were
there you go.
they were still happy with it.
Okay.
Right.
And then speaking of the strike, Bex and I wasn't on set, so I didn't meet Bex until we were on the picket line
Wow.
together. And by the way, we worked out an entire sequel where they now play Taylor's brother.
Oh,
If we ever got the chance,
Oh, that'd be great.
because they transitioned
Oh,
after the movie.
I recognize Bex from the Scream.
Yes, yeah,
And
no,
the
totally.
killing,
And the
where
killing,
they
yeah.
did
Killing.
such a, I mean, as far as a breakout role goes,
Yeah.
that was fantabulous.
Yeah. So somebody got scared along the way and made Taylor into a straight
Mm.
girl, but Bex
I guess
played
it worked
it.
out for them.
Both Bex and the guy playing the boyfriend, as like they agreed, aside from what it, and I think with Greg the director, like they are bisexual.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's coded throughout the whole movie just through their performances.
Yeah, for sure.
You can definitely sense that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're just horny.
yeah.
Right.
For
Nothing wrong
whatever.
with that.
No.
The best of us are.
In a
Yes.
mask, not in a mask, creepy clown, dead guy on the ground
Yeah.
for the boner. Love it. But they had great chemistry.
That was
as well.
improv. That was
Yeah.
them improving.
Oh,
that's so fun.
The boner bit. They're the best.
I mean, because since we're talking about the characters in general, as sometimes with a friend group, the dynamic can come across as forced, and that is not this. This is a group that, yes, there was the drama, but I want to hang out with them at a haunt. They all seem to belong together, even with. And I think that all their chemistry was really natural, and
Yeah.
you get that through the lines, you get that through some of the improv
Yeah.
and them playing with it. But the characters were real people,
Yeah.
not just lambs for the
Yeah.
slaughter.
Well, and the dialogue, I appreciated that too, because a lot of times when you have dialogue for younger people written by older people,
Hello,
What
fellow
do you-
kids.
wait,
hello, fellow kids.
I'm not to pretend to be offended.
Yeah. no, it's a good thing. Like,
Yes.
it's relatable.
Yeah.
It's relatable.
Part of it's luck. Part of it is a great casting director and Greg making the right picks. That group just super clicked
Oh, that's
together.
great.
I've had that luck. I had that luck with Light as a Feather as well.
Oh, okay.
Where those girls became BFFs for real and like still go to each other's premieres like 5 years later. Yeah,
Aw.
it's very sweet.
So we find out that the boys part of the group has scored these VIP tickets to the Hellfest haunted attraction,
Mm.
which is very similar to I'm going to compare it to a Six Flags Fright Fest,
Right.
maybe.
It reminds me a little kind of a Knott's energy. And I was going to
Yeah.
say the park. Where did you film that? Because it felt very Knott's-ish.
I will say that when I wrote it, Knott's was definitely my favorite.
Okay.
I think I said this before we were rolling. Like, Universal has money to spend on their mazes. It's great. But the ambiance is you're still kind of in a theme park
Yeah.
when you're walking around. Knott's, the entire place feels, I mean, half of Knott's on a normal day is Ghost Town.
It is.
So like they really do it up, and maybe not as much now as 20 years ago when I first went, or 7-8 years ago when we were making Hellfest, but just the vibe in general of Knott's. So that really influenced what I was like. I was making sure that I wasn't just doing just the mazes, like the spaces between the mazes, the scares on the street. Like I leaned into that as much as I could, and Knott's was 100% the inspiration for a lot of that. And a lot of the mazes and the scared zones changed from draft to draft, kind of depending on what we could afford. We shot it. They shot it. It was shot at it was actually at a water park in Atlanta
Really?
that was closed for the winter.
Oh,
Huh.
wow. That's convenient.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I never know.
And it was again, it was Galen Hurd. It was the entire Walking Dead crew off season.
Oh, great.
And,
Awesome.
and so all the park stuff was at the water park. There's quite a few, not quite a few, but there's some of the bigger for scope shots. The crowds are enhanced by CG, and there's extra rides sort of added in the background. And then the mazes themselves were almost all shot at the first one was made specifically the first one and the last ones were made as sets. The ones in the middle of the movie were I don't know, I can't remember what it's called, but it's Atlanta's Reign of Terror. It's like the one that doesn't get taken
yeah.
down, that's up all year round.
Oh, yep.
And they shot several sequences in that one.
So you mean like the high school one and all that? That was
The
part
first
of...
Deformed School, the first one, and that was the one that actually survived every draft of the script, and that was 100% inspired by me. When they were sending me to all of these, I got invited to the one at Circus in Vegas,
Oh.
which
the
is
Fright
kind of
Dome.
the Fright, yes, which is a little low rent. But they had this one at the time. It was right after Fury Road came out. They had this Mad Max one that was amazing.
Oh my
Like their
God.
mazes, I mean, everything about it being at Circus was low rent, but the mazes were great. And they had this one that was like haunted goth dolly girl. And I'm just like, I live here with them, where it was just nothing but goth girls in baby doll dresses and clown makeup and cutesy voices.
Oh my God.
And
That's my TikTok feed.
Yes. So Deformed Schools was sort of inspired by that.
I love
where
that.
I wanted like the zombie reform school girls.
Uh,
So that one was built as a set because that was when we spent. It was the first one in the movie, so it really had to sort of set the scene, and it's much bigger than when you go to haunt. It's the hallways are much bigger, and the one thing that the one conceit that we're asking people to sort of buy is that there's not a security guard every 3 feet like there are in
And I was
actual
gonna say,
haunts.
it's not a Congo
And then-
line.
Right.
Yeah,
And it's not
tons of people.
yeah.
yeah. I mean, some of the set pieces, like, I want that to be our podcast.
Right.
set.
No.
Like,
Yeah.
so cute.
Yeah.
Cool set. But that's where we get the second kill, right?
First
Yes.
kill.
Well,
The
Well,
second
or
kill
second-
besides the
Second-
Barrymore.
yes.
but
Yeah.
before
Other
we
than the
get
cold
there, I want to talk about watching the killer walk into the park.
Yes.
Which is
Yeah.
really
Yes.
cool because you see him, they just shoot it from the back,
Yeah.
and he's got his hoodie up, and they've established that you have to go through the metal
Yeah.
detector, you have to do all these things, and we watch him do the same thing they did, and he just automatically finds a weapon and mask, and it's just like you're just like, all right, bro, like
Yeah.
it's I give him points just for the effort.
I also really, I mean, a lot of the time when I've watched this movie so many times, some of the things that stand out is noticing new set pieces. And like for this watch, I was like, what, that eyeball? What the heck? That eyeball is awesome. Like right outside, just the entryway. And I think that's your foyer into hell. This like eye that's just like, hey, what's up?
That was again that Atlanta haunt. They found it there and they were like, hey, can we use it? Like they got so much stuff from those guys.
That's so cool.
And they just stacked the movie with everything they could.
I
Yeah.
want that DJ booth.
I know.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. It's so good.
Let's find it.
So good.
That's like the most horror nights thing of the whole movie.
Oh my God.
You know, when I first went to Knott's 20 something years ago, it was like spooky music pumped in. At what point did like dubstep become horror music?
Oh my gosh.
Because that's
Around
all.
the time of the sliders.
Can you okay, so I had to work at Universal the year because they did dubstep. There was a period of time where a couple of years they had dubstep. There was one maze. I think it was like Classic Monsters maze, but it was a dubstep maze.
It was the remix.
It was the
Classic
remix.
Monster
So
remix.
That was the year that I was in the pool, so I
Oh
like
my
moved
God.
around. And I remember one night I had to be in that maze, and I thought I was brainwashed. I walked out and I thought I saw happy, ha 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 from like Zoolander. I swear I got conditioned.
Amazing. That is
You
amazing.
never want to be in a room with dubstep for more than 8 hours.
No.
With that kill, I will say I love the line delivery where she's just like, oh God, well now I'm gonna mess it up.
She's like, are you gonna do it?
No, she's okay, just do it.
Oh, I know. Because she almost seems hesitant. She's like, okay, well, just do it.
But the girl that he targets, is that the one that's like, you're not even
oh,
scary?
you mean that bitch Brittany?
Yeah.
That bit. Is it my
You
note?
said
Yes.
second kill when this bitch Brittany.
Bitch Brittany.
I would tell you that is an ADR voice, and it had about 5,000 takes, and it never quite
Really?
landed. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
That was a local actor
God.
who could not hit the line, and then they tried to fix it in ADR, and for
That
whatever
bitch
reason,
Brittany.
they ran out of time trying to get that girl to be like on point with her
Wow.
dialogue. The girls in the beginning too, actually.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Yeah.
Well, I can't remember. Natalie makes up for it with
Yeah.
her.
she's amazing.
So the killer has a mask on the whole time, but I do think like his expressions, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, I wish I could see his face when she's okay, just do it, because he doesn't do it immediately. He sits there. Is he like, well, fine, rude. I was gonna do it, but I'm not gonna do it because you told me. But either when he does it and the slow facial changes that she makes, like you see all of the thoughts, you
Oh, yeah.
see it as it goes
Yeah.
down. That scene is
Yeah.
so good.
It is.
That we always knew that was like sort of the moment where it really begins, and it was always tricky because you have to kind of undo it almost immediately after, because if she thinks it's real that early in the story,
Mm-hmm.
you got nowhere to go.
Right.
So we had to really sell that moment, freak her out, but then calm her down, and then it's sort of like a stair step. Like every time she gets freaked out, she believes a little more.
Yeah.
The mask went through a million iterations, but that scene is something that was always very clear and stayed the same in every version because we knew that's how we had to start it off.
The catalyst.
And you had Tony Gardner made that mask, right?
Yes, he made the mask, and they didn't settle on that design until not long before shooting. I think in the very first draft I wrote, it was just sort of like an opaque Sweet Alice type mask, and then we were going to do the devil mask, which we ended up using in the beginning. And it was tricky, and eventually I decided it wasn't my problem, and they landed on it. And there were like multiple versions of it made, which pays off later, which was an idea that was come up with almost later as well. But yeah, the mask ended up being like both simple and perfect at the same time. How do you add a mask to the pantheon of slasher masks and have it hit?
It's almost like the simpler the better.
Yeah, really, it really is.
Well, and it almost looked homemade. I could have maybe not couldn't have made that one, but it's the texture that gives it that. This is not a haunt that has the money to spend on $1 billion mask, but also if they spent that much money, they probably wouldn't have just left it out for him to grab. But there's also something very gruesome about it being almost that homemade energy.
Oh yeah.
It kind of reminds me of, like, have you guys ever seen those like folk apple core dolls?
Oh shit, yeah.
There's a store in the upper, well, I don't know my directions. The part of the valley that I don't go to it's called Traditions, and they sell all of this Halloween stuff all year long, and they have these dolls that are like witches that are made out of apples. And then they're painted, and it looks like that. It's really creepy.
Oh, they're like kind of chunky looking.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I'll pass.
But so then he's like stalking her. He's following her around, and she's just, he's behind me. And they're like, bitch, you crazy.
Oh yeah, that's such a place where it's like nobody's following you. That's their job, and it's so hard to be believed. And
That's just slasher 101.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like, he chooses the girl he doesn't like the girl who said he's not scary, and then he really chooses the girl who he knows will be scared.
Yeah.
Because that's what he wants.
Right.
That's his only motivation, is to make sure
man.
people find him scary.
Ooh.
Well, this is a very much throughout the movie. It's like a playing with your food type of situation. He does not let up on her. And there's, I know it's jumping ahead a little bit, but things like the bathroom and stuff where it's this like,
I got my questions.
Almost. And I just love that his dedication to his craft,
Yeah.
is very, he's very solid on it, but it is a good pick. And you can see that how much fun he has.
Yeah. That's a little bit of what that pause is at the beginning too, is that he's not quite satisfied with her. So when Natalie is there saying, just do it, then he's, oh, you're my favorite. I can kill her.
See that he's almost okay.
So you're the one.
Yeah.
All right, you want
I love
this?
that moment where he doesn't even do it immediately. There's a little bit of a pause.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh.
And like, I love when they start playing games, and Gavin, oh my God, they've built up Gavin so much at this point. They're like, you're totally gonna fuck this dude. You know you like him. He likes you. Come on, guys, let's do it.
Yeah. That was so, like, that gave me flashbacks.
But he was cute.
He was cute. And when you're that age and like, you get to leave the house and you get to go to events unattended, it's like, Chris gonna be so flirty. You're gonna find places to make out. It's so exciting.
I don't know for sure if it was Kayla or Blair that wrote a lot of their interactions, but I know a lot of it was improv too. And it's just so great. Every bit they have is so great.
So
and
cute.
he actually survives a lot longer in the script, and it was decided in edit that it was better to kill him
sad.
sooner. But that's why.
It really ups the ante.
Yeah.
Well, you think he's gonna be the final boy next to him.
Yeah.
Right?
Initially, he just sort of loses
Mm-hmm.
his phone and doesn't quite realize that he just escaped getting killed. And was around for a little longer. There's a handful of scenes that he's still in.
Well, I love when they're in the photo booth and they're making. I love that scene because
so
you think
good.
like
It's so
you think
cute.
they're gonna go in. He's gonna try to stab him, but then he just takes the photo and I love that her friend notices.
Yeah.
She's like,
Brooke-
hey,
Brooke is on it.
She's like Charles Bronson, like going after him. Like, she's like me, where she does not realize that she's a small person, and she's just like, well, fuck bitches up. Come on. I do the same thing.
I'm going to follow him to a dark alleyway.
we should all have a friend like that. That's offensive.
But I mean, a lot of that was in the script, but a lot of that also is Greg's credit, the director, because he wanted you to have that feeling of when you're walking through the haunt. Like half the time you're walking through a haunt, and if they do pack it too crowded, you see what the scare is before you even get to it.
Yeah.
Which is why you should go to haunts early in the month.
Yes.
So a lot of what he wanted to do is, if we have a movie that we know is going to be 90% jump scares because they're in a haunt, then we need to build up, make you think it's coming, don't do it, so then we can actually surprise you later. So there's multiple moments where we think something's going to happen and something doesn't. And that was very intentional. And a lot of the scares of the girls in the mazes are also 100% real, because he would have the scare actors jump out at different times with each take.
That was choreographed because that's really cool.
There's one that's, it's funny because Beck's full name is Bex Taylor-Klaus. The character's name is Taylor.
Oh.
There is a bit where Rain Brooke gets scared, and you just hear Bex laughing in the background. And she goes, "Shut up, Taylor." That's 100% real, because the scare was real. I think it's the one, the hand that comes down from the ceiling.
Oh my God, I love that.
and she tells her to shut up, and that's 100%. There's another one, and I'm sure we'll get to the dark ride when we go in order. But there's a scare in there with Natalie where she's like, the animatronic goes off and she's like, "Fuck you," and starts laughing, because that's also a real reaction. Every time they would do a take, the things would go off at different points.
That's so smart, though.
That's very smart. Yeah.
But he wasn't doing it in like an Alfred Hitchcock misogynist asshole sort of way. They knew I'm not going to tell you when the scare is. Sorry.
Get a genuine reaction.
And you know what kind of movie we're making, and we want genuine reactions.
It is difficult if even in going through working at haunts, and when you go through and you know that something's going to trigger something or whatever, no matter how hard you try, there would be that moment of like, something's about to pop out over here. Something's about to pop out over here. So I love that they were like, "Hey, no, we gotta make this as authentic as possible."
Oh, but then poor Gavin, he's so noble. He's like, "I'm gonna go win her. This animal will catch up to you guys. I just want to get her a toy."
No. And I thought when he's like, "Here, I'll pay you for that," and then the worker, the game operator,
like, "No, bro."
And you think that Gavin's gonna be like, "Okay, maybe he is an asshole," because you think he's gonna try to challenge him and be like, "What, bro?" But he's just like, "Okay, thank you." No, be a jerk, because I don't want to feel sad.
my favorite, and it's Gavin improv the line. He's like, "I really think my skill is I give you money and you hand me the." He's like, that was all him, and like his awkwardness was great.
He's funny.
I really thought he brought his mom to the premiere, but it turned out to be his agent. But I really wanted to pretend it was his mom.
Just pretend it's his mom. That's so cute.
Well, yeah, he like steals a little stuffed animal thing, and then boom, and that's so it's such a visceral kill, because like when he hits him in the mouth with the throat, like I felt it.
It's so fast.
Oh, and then you do not expect, because at this point it's been kind of this like PG-13, like none of the kills have been that brutal.
Yeah.
And then the mallet comes down and his head is just a watermelon.
You did not
like,
expect that.
No, totally. And just
You're welcome.
killing him so early in the film was but it really did up the stakes. So
it was a smart choice. It was a smart choice done in post to cut 2 or 3 more scenes with him and kill him that early.
Yeah.
And it worked, and it was running long anyway.
No, but honestly, having that scene of them in the photo booth and just establishing like his sweetness, and then brutally butchering this man. It worked.
Yeah.
Like
the kill itself, the high striker, was in every draft I worked on, and we had to fight to keep it in so many times because people really struggled with the tone of it. And I'm like, no, this Greg and Gail and I felt like this is the tone of the movie.
Yeah.
Yes, it's funny because the bell still goes off.
Yeah.
But it's also brutal and kind of sad. We just kept telling people, I'm like, it's not totally confusing. This is the tone of the movie.
Yeah.
It is fun, but it's also a little brutal sometimes. So thankfully we got to keep it.
That's awesome.
I'm glad.
And then the dark ride.
This is the dark
ride. And so they really like, they like really built up this Deadlands part of the amusement park, which is where the scare actors can touch you. And it's a more intense horror experience. And to get there, they have to go through a dark ride. Was this inspired by Funhouse at all?
So cool.
The concept of the Deadlands was again back to Vegas and the circus. They had one maze you had to sign a waiver for to go in so they could touch you. And it really wasn't that bad. I mean, I think it was more a psych out than anything else. But there are those ones. There's one, I think
17th Door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or there's one, I think it's in Atlanta, where you go through naked.
Oh, I know they did it here.
They did
Isn't
that
that
here?
Alone? It's
That
called
might
Alone,
that might
right?
be Alone.
Yeah,
The
I
one
have
you're
friends
talking
who did
about-
that one.
The one in Atlanta is
Yeah.
that's different. That's run by another company. Like they're just in Atlanta.
Oh.
I've shot there before. That's why I know what it is.
Oh.
And then of course McCamey Manor. That
Yep.
Scary. Ugh,
Rip.
gross. Thank God. But
Yeah.
but this just the idea that you have just signing a piece of paper just as a psych out is
Mhm.
great.
Yeah.
The funhouse part of ride itself, I think I just wanted a dark ride, like an old school blacklight dark ride, and that was the other one that they built. There's no track. There's just PAs pushing a cart, which is amazing. I think the loading area they shot in Atlanta, but like the interior was all set.
Okay.
And it's probably my favorite sequence in terms of just
It's really-
winding you up. And
Yeah.
cinematography and the colors and everything is so much fun.
Terrifying because when it stops and she's just like, okay, is this part of it?
Yeah.
If you're in that situation and you already think somebody's after you and then you see them, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. Because then they're all over the place.
I also just wish that more places did. I want to go through a little vintage ride like that with, it's like the love ride, but it's not because it's murder.
Like
The very first year I went to Knott's, which I think was 2001, maybe. They used to have, maybe it's still there. I don't know. I've never been there in the daylight since then. But they used to have some chintzy little go through. It's like a dark ride where you're going through time and there's dinosaurs.
Oh,
and stuff.
yeah.
They like refurbed that one to be spooky. And
Oh,
it-
yeah. It's like the mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do the
they
mine
do
they
that.
do the mine carts. But yeah, that's probably my favorite bit of the movie. Is that ride?
Well, and when she comes, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
When she comes out of it, because it's fun, and that would be it for me.
Oh, yeah.
If someone sat and just seeing like this menacing shape as she's appearing from the tunnel and you don't even see her because of him there is just
No.
something like inwardly that triggers every flag for me where I'd be like, this is when I would leave the park.
Yeah. Like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That was straight up inspired by a YouTube clip. There is a clip of some girl on a ride locked in the thing, and the guy's sitting on it, and she's like thrashing and throwing herself
Oh my
around.
gosh.
It's like a real clip.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Nope. Nope. Absolutely not. But then that's when we get the horde of others.
Yes.
And I love that misdirective. And now the others will lead you to the Deadlands. And it's, see, the whole time it was just some guy trying to get extra credit points, be employee of the month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still be like,
Again,
no.
you
Sorry.
every time you ratchet it up, you got to take it back down. Otherwise, you don't have a movie, because then you call the police, you call security.
Yeah.
And, well, maybe not security, because as we soon see, they're trash. But
Yeah. Not that guy.
So then once they're in the next maze, Natalie is nearly cornered again by the other through plexiglass.
Oh,
And that felt, it was like almost like it turned into an escape room for a minute.
yeah. Oh my gosh. This is when they get separated, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They all, okay. Yeah.
But then during this, we have Asher and Quinn are separated,
Yeah.
and the other finds and attacks Asher. And then we get the
Okay.
eye kill.
This is one of
Oh.
3 questions that it's not necessarily a question, but I found I don't know if they were intentional, but little homages here and there.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, the eye, syringe,
Maybe.
little bit of a,
Maybe.
okay. Zombie. Uh,
Yeah.
But I can't do that shit. So I'm glad that that wasn't
That
there.
sequence, and I credit this to having a director who's also an editor,
100%.
Can't. I can't.
because
Look.
it is
Mm-mm.
that whole gag just works.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh.
Greg doesn't get enough credit for basically shaping the entire Paranormal Activity franchise, because that movie was
Oh.
made in the edit. Like
Yeah.
they knew what they were shooting, but they had so much footage, especially the first 2. They shot so much footage that they really found the scares with Greg trying different things
Yeah.
in the edit.
Yeah.
So he 100% knows tension
Oh my gosh.
so well.
Eye stuff is already a no-go for
Oh, yeah.
me, but you get
Oh,
a
for
neat.
sure.
I think the thinner the point of contact, the weapon is, the worse it is.
Uh-huh.
A little. Ooh,
Yeah, no, the Splinter and Zombie is 100%. Yeah.
Nope.
Well,
It's
also
effective.
before they die, even though the scares that they're getting in there, the train subway scare is
so
something where I was
cool.
like,
Again, that was found at that Atlanta, the giant Atlanta haunted house that we shot a bunch of things at.
Oh man.
That was just there, so they used
Yeah.
it.
I mean, that's always been one of my fears of I would freak out. That'd be so crazy. And then it's just to lead you into the next room. That's
Oh my
awesome.
gosh.
even the makeup when you're going from the regular haunts into the Deadlands and then it being like, yeah, this is the premiere one is great because the on the bed, her glow in the dark veining and everything was really crazy.
Yeah, with the flashlights.
Yeah, and getting flashlight props and the way that they're like, hi, this is the VIP experience. This is why you know you're getting the VIP experience.
That's like straight out of Knots.
Yeah. Get trapped.
So
Another one down.
before anybody can freak out about Asher, Natalie gets jizzed on by ooze.
Oh yeah, the fly ooze, the bug ooze.
Rude. So rude.
You need to warn a bitch before you...
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not polite monsters.
Nope. But also, if they did that in a haunt and that happened to one of us or me, I'd just be like, I'm sorry, but I need to be warned before I get fucking ooze jizz all over me.
I mean, I signed up for blood, but not for ooze.
Yeah.
Like, I have limits. Okay.
Yeah. I think I can't remember which one. One of them even says you got Brundlefly.
Yeah,
or something
Brundlefly.
like that.
Oh, I
Yep.
love that.
Brundlefly.
I didn't catch that.
Purely for
Yep.
myself.
Love it. So Natalie and Brooke go to the bathroom to clean up, and they have this interesting moment where they talk about Spain.
Yeah.
I don't. I didn't. That scene is 100% Greg. There was definitely more in the drafts. Like in the first drafts I did, it was like plans for after high school, because originally they were high school age, and it was like, I'm going here, you're going here. How do we still be friends? The usual high school stuff. And so they wanted. I don't know if it was a Kayla or Blair, but the overall feeling is we wanted to maintain some of that with the idea that Natalie just, her life was more complicated and couldn't do the things that they had been planning to do. I think there was more setting that up in the beginning that just didn't make the cut, because it does feel like a little out of nowhere. I would agree, but I think that the tension in the bathroom scene it makes up for
Yes.
the randomness of
Like
that.
when she texts him and then she hears the
Oh
phone.
my gosh.
Oh,
I was very proud of myself.
No,
The
that's
dryer.
a very tense scene.
I don't like using those dryers, and I feel like I have a really good sense of spatial awareness sometimes, but then that part I'm like, but do I? Because what if that did happen and him just standing there?
so
Now that it's a water park, you understand why the hair dryer
Yeah.
is so high.
so I gotta tell you guys, I watched this. I was like, I would totally know he's there. That doesn't work. And then last night, I go to the car to go get dinner before my husband comes downstairs. And I'm on my phone, and we've had this weird joke about the Speak No Evil movie where every time we talk to each other, we're like, "Of course, I'm a bloody doctor." And so I'm on my phone waiting for him. And he comes up to the window. He's like, "Of course, I'm a bloody doctor." And I jump and I punched him in the nose. And I was like, okay, I get it. Somebody can be that close to you and you will not know it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in your own.
The myth has been busted.
I will say that's the other scene that I felt a little. It reminded me a lot of Scream with the shoes. This is an oddball, but a little bit of a Halloween 6 there in the bathroom.
Bit, yeah. No, that
Would not crawl in that bathroom for anything. I would just be
No.
like, kill me.
Nope.
that's we went on K-Rock when the movie came out, and I think it was Allie was like, bathrooms are I'm always afraid of someone's going to murder me in the bathroom. I was there. Greg was obviously interviewed, not me. But yeah, crawling on the bathroom floor, like everything about a bathroom is unnerving.
Yeah.
And we were kind of sad because Halloween 2018 also came out that year, and there was a
that's right.
bathroom scare.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, like the movie. Hi, Ryan Turek. Great movie.
Oh,
I actually love that.
Ryan's
movie.
out?
I went to at one point look at Hellfest up on IMDb, and it was skinned in ads for Halloween. But you can't compete with Michael Myers.
There needs to be more bathroom scenes, in my opinion. They're terrifying.
You're completely vulnerable.
All right, we have to talk about the security guard because I hate him. I am so sad that he does not die.
He is the worst.
Is there a cut? Please tell me there's footage somewhere of this man just getting it.
I don't know. I think he was just a local actor they brought in to say a couple lines. But it's the trailer moment because he says, "Welcome to Hellfest."
That's such a good line. Did you write that line?
I don't remember.
At the very
That one I
least,
actually
he
don't
should have
remember.
gotten fired.
I mean, the question of security was always, there was a draft where one of the friends normally worked security and was off that night because we had the constant like logic problem of what security going to do.
Yeah.
And eventually we just decided, look, our buy for the audience is that security is just non-existent.
Yeah.
And so at some point we had to raise the stakes. They have to say something to somebody.
Yeah.
Like you can't deny it any further. So then, and authority figures in slasher movies don't believe you. So
well, and especially being in a situation where if you're in danger, like you really want, that's the only help that you have, and for them not to believe you either. Ooh. Dude can.
Yeah, that guy again. Well, thank casting and Greg from picking a choice for the guy who's just going to be a dick at the right moment. I saw him in another movie. I can't remember where it was now. And I'm like, that's the guy. That's the guy.
That's the guy.
He's got like an Ed Ackerman energy. I don't know if you guys know him or not.
If I saw a picture, I'd probably.
He's in a lot of the Hatchet movies, and he's an Adam Green guy.
Oh my gosh,
he very similar vibe to them. Not that he sucks; he's great. But then after all this, we come out of the bathroom, and Taylor has for some reason decided to volunteer to be part of the guillotine show. It's not the hanging show.
Nope. Certainly isn't the hanging, not Scary Farm who sue people. But like, clearly different.
I get Taylor volunteering. Taylor's having the time of their life with this.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't know. Anytime Taylor does anything in there, I'm like, yeah, because that's exactly what would be me. Like, look at this. This is fucking awesome.
Taylor was written like as, I mean, I don't know, all of us have the friend who's just like super duper into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I needed to give that, the attention it deserves, because you go to the haunts, that's like the friend that makes it almost more fun.
Yeah.
Because they're just so into it.
The character's very real. It's just... You got some friends who are just a little extra.
I would be the Natalie of it all. I'd just be like,
yeah. I don't know what I am.
Oh, 100%.
I don't want to know what I am.
You're the slutty one.
Yeah. It is what it is.
That's what I heard. That's what she first said. Can you come over and do this? I'm like, describe the others.
Trademark since 2008, baby. I don't know. Let's just adjust these.
That was amazing that you switched to set deck. You got anxious.
Hey, there's a little out of order here. Work on this. Put these back here.
So Taylor has volunteered for this freaking show during all of this, when there's might be a killer on the loose. At the very least, there is a stalker around.
Yeah.
Like, her boyfriend has disappeared.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's not her problem, right?
But you know who does appear?
Tony Todd.
Tony fucking Todd.
How the heck? You're just watching a movie, and then out of nowhere, Tony Todd.
Well, his voice has appered several times before now.
Yeah, his voice appeared.
I saw his name in the credits. I was like, oh, he was nice enough to lend his voice.
Right.
No, he is there.
They had him for a day.
Yeah.
Or night, I should say.
I mean I've had Tony Todd for a day.
The idea of I think we called him the Barker, like a carnival Barker, was early in the script. And the idea was hopefully to get a good horror person to do it, have them in one dedicated bit, and then use them in ADR as the voice of the park throughout the park. That was always the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Didn't know who we were going to get. When it was Jennifer Lynch still directing, it was going to be Marilyn Manson, which would have been awkward. She'd shot something with him recently.
Not doing that.
Yeah. So I didn't know who they were going to go out to. So I wrote all of that without knowing it was going to be Tony Todd. And then later at the end, we got him for some ADR. So I wrote him some extra lines at that point. Had I known that they were going to get Tony Todd, I would have, found ways to write so much more stuff.
Right.
So cool,
that deep velvety voice.
Yeah.
He still kills what's there,
forever.
Yeah.
Bring him in for the sequel.
Yeah. No. Yes.
Not a return of the shit security guard.
But Natalie freaks out when she recognizes the executioner's cute shoes.
Yes.
See, I get you. I get you.
Yeah. That was another bit that survived every draft because it was so much fun. I love the idea of a mask hiding under another mask.
Yes.
And like the part that was always hard with that was like, what is the scare, the reveal, or is the scare Natalie knowing? Because if Natalie knows something's up, we're kind of tipping the hand of the removal. Is the scare her seeing the boot, or is the scare him pulling off the mask? And I always like the mask more, but for the story, it works better that she kind of freaks out when she sees the boot. But like the prop guillotine not actually cutting her head and just beating the shit out of her neck, like that was always the plan. That was they're like, for all the ways the script got polished or it changed, the things that remained the same were like most of the kills from my first draft, and that's why I'm still probably so happy with, even though things changed along the way. And that was always sort of like the end of the second act was this guillotine bit.
We got to talk about Seth because I think you're a little kinky.
Probably.
Like, I'm calling you out on this.
I'm okay with that.
And probably just because we're friends, because if it was someone else, I'd be like, oh, yes. But no. So she, like, it's like a nightmare. She's like, okay, get me out of this thing. He ties her down more, and it freaks me out. Like, I can feel it in my skin, but it's also kind of pervy.
Kind of erotic. I will say though, I'm very impressed that they managed to carve a fake head in that amount of time
with that hair.
That's the first thing where I was like, how far ahead of time did you have to volunteer that they had to do
months in advance?
There was some stagehand going through wigs so fast.
Oh god. He's only got like a cell phone pic. He's all, well, not this one. Jeez, son of a bitch. Oh god. I think another time that we really get to see an actor who without a face emote is that guillotine when he's sliding his finger and the blood moves across it, and it's just kind of like, okay, so that didn't work. Let me try again. And giving him those moments really brought him from being just like generic guy that's killing into being like an actual person who's going around. He's planning this. He's improving because not everything's going to go. And this is my first time in this place. I don't know. I'm figuring it. Yeah. But those scenes I love because, of course, we're going to focus on like the amazing relationship with the friends, but we need our villains to have their time.
Thank you, because I will take full credit for that scene. I think the genesis of it was obviously they're the hanging at Not Scary Farm is like their big annual evening show thing. And I don't know if it's true. I've never looked it up because I don't want to ruin it. But, you know, like I said, I first went 20 years ago when I first moved to LA, 25 years ago. And even then, my friend that took me was like, oh, yeah, they did this one year and somebody actually got hung and died. So that was a whole big planned sequence that we just had to cut for time and money. And so we just said, okay, they're running. There's some people here and we'll stab them. And we feel like it's a total downgrade for what comes before. And it's kind of like the one regret he and I have.
Still effective.
It's effective, but it's not
punch in the gut. One, too.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the big moment we wanted it to be.
Oh man.
Oh well, I mean, I liked it because I thought it brought the realism and it finally got the attention to get these people out of here. Yes. And you know, as soon as everyone's leaving, and for some reason our girls go the opposite direction.
That was rewritten so many times. It's like, how do we get them in here without them seeming stupid? And I don't know that we ever solved that problem.
It's the classic, you know, trope that, what is it, Sydney says, your bimbo's going up the stairs instead of out the door.
Out the front door. It's insulting.
But you gotta, I mean, sometimes that's just how you move your story along.
Exactly.
I think we know they needed. He was coming for them, and they needed a place to hide. So let's hide in the maze.
It's cool.
Even though it's called Into Hell, and this is Hellfest, and this feels like a finale. Let's hide in there.
Yeah. Why not? Everyone else was going to the front of the maze. We had to be different.
And then they realize there's nowhere to go but except through the maze.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, there's no other way to get out of those things once you're in there.
No, love it.
That's so scary.
There's definitely no exits.
Nope.
What worse place?
No
to be
fire
in?
safety, no security concerns.
I mean, technically, this place didn't have security except for one dude in charge of the whole thing.
Oh my gosh.
One guy when you get in, and then that's it. So maybe they didn't have emergency exits. Maybe they were like, no, we don't have the budget for signs.
Right. But that room full of all the white masks.
Oh my god,
isn't that great?
Yes.
I love that.
Again, found at that Atlanta haunt.
Yes. Wow.
Might go to this Atlanta haunt. Like,
I know.
really
Where's
this?
this?
Atlanta haunt?
The rooms that were like over the top, that were part of that haunt. The rooms where we had the lights and the things pressing in on the walls. Those were sets.
Okay.
So I was like, that one was kind of 50-50.
Okay.
And about a third of that sequence is shot as a reshoot as well.
Oh.
I want to know, did the laser beam door things, is that real? Do they use those in mazes to set things off?
I'm sure they do. It depends on their budget.
I mean, some mazes will have like step-on triggers and stuff
Yeah.
like that. There's definitely triggers that are by people, or a lot of
Yeah,
times
we
it's the
have-
person who's working who's like, there's people here.
Yeah.
For the
Yeah.
pop out scares at Horror Nights, we had a foot pedal that we would
Oh.
step on and pop out and then come back in.
My one complaint about Universal really is a little bit of overuse.
It's-
Of those things,
yeah,
I think.
and overuse of the actor's energy too, I will
Aw.
say. But not better.
Oh. And I love when they start looking around for weapons and
Yeah.
everything's plastic.
It's Scream 3.
Oh my
Fun.
gosh.
I think at one point I'd written they find a fire axe like in a fire extinguisher case backstage.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Which I thought would have helped a little bit.
that's
But
smart.
you know,
That's really smart.
They did have the axe. I mean, it was just
It's
in a
true.
corpse. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It was yeah, exactly. But
One more setup they didn't need to do.
yeah.
they get separated, right?
Yes, they're
Point.
separated. And as the other corners Brooke, Natalie locates them and stabs them. And that stab's good. That's a
Oh,
really
yeah.
visceral. Stay down, motherfucker.
It's we reshot the ending. They shot 2 endings on set, and then we came back and did another at Warner Brothers like months later, and we rebuilt just that last part of the set with the rolling doors and the things pressing through the nylon. And it was a different actor playing the other, and at first his body language is completely different, but then we realized that actually kind of worked because he's finally a little unhinged.
Oh.
And it's like he's running for the first time, and he's kind of like running into the walls and slipping. And it was like, I think we started leaning into the idea that like they're about to get away and he can't have that.
Yeah.
So he gets a little sloppier, and he wants to. And this is where his sort of, and I hope this comes through, but like his obsession with finding the perfect victim of who's the most scared. He's going to save Natalie for last, so he kind of like knocks her out. Going to come back to her and get rid of her friend first,
Yeah.
but she wakes up before he can do that.
Oh,
Mhm.
And
I
yeah,
love
and it's I always felt like it was a good, satisfying kill, and
it is.
Yeah.
she loved shooting that. Amy, she was so ready to get bloodied up and then jump out of the wall and stab him.
No,
It's
good
like
enough.
a really good final girl moment.
It really
Yeah.
is. I like her. I really like her
Mhm.
as an actress.
And we kept Brooke alive. We killed her. We shot it with her dying and keeping her alive.
I like that because they
And-
can go to Spain.
Yes, they can go to Spain.
I love it.
Instead of her holding her, I'll see you in
Right.
Spain.
I know. You think that would be like a moment where that would come back at the end. We're just like, Spain. We always have Spain.
Also, Rain had just signed on to a really high profile TV show. And so we were like, we should probably keep her.
Oh, yeah.
And then the cops finally show up.
Finally.
Dear
Finally.
God, finally. And they go in, find out the girls are safe, but the other is gone.
Dun dun dun.
Because there were fire exits.
Because
After-
there were.
this whole time.
Oh man. And I love this ending.
Mhm.
Oh, my
it's
gosh.
Such a great ending.
Yeah.
It's a perfect way to just wrap around the story. Just, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So the idea of the other really came from Jennifer and I, where you guys remember her movie Surveillance?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She basically like the 2 FBI agents who are, spoiler for a movie from 2007, sort of get away. And she always is like, what if she loves the idea of like killers hiding as normal people.
Mhm.
And she always thought the idea of this, the name sort of came of it, where she wanted to like have footage from like the cold open kill of the girl who is the victim. And she's saying, no, it wasn't him. It was this other man. And that was all she could use was describe him as other man. And it kind of went from other man into other. But her idea was that like, this is, and what's funny is it's in the dialogue as they're walking into the park, they basically give you the whole thing of what the other is right there. Quinn and Taylor are like, oh, you didn't hear about that, like the farm last year? Yeah, like,
yeah.
you know,
3 days before they found the body.
and then he ends on, they look just like the rest of us. But that's exactly what it was. Now, the idea that like just a normal person who like one day a year is, I'm going to go out and kill some people.
And it's just, I love that because it was such a simple motive. It was just like, he just wanted to.
Yeah.
He has his little collection, little serial killer dude,
Yeah.
just once a year.
This is his purge.
But he's a normal dude who has a child. And it's like, okay.
Oh, and that
that-
little girl.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That ending was Greg's idea. But it fit in with the idea that we'd had from the originals. Like, how do we, just in case, how can we like sell this? And also didn't quite, just the two girls sitting there saying, what do you mean he got away? Didn't feel like enough of a button.
Mm-hmm.
So we shot that extra ending. And it's one of my favorite things too.
Yeah.
Oh, it's eerie because of course you see this little girl when she sits up, and then all of a sudden, Daddy!
Yes.
And you get that good little Bear
Oh.
McCreary stab at the end, and the title
Oh.
comes back up.
Yeah. Well, when you think about these serial killers that we know of, they're always even if they're like, oh, he was such a nice guy, but they're always like, they're not,
Yeah.
they're loners. And
Right.
so
Mhm.
having him be this family man, and you'll
Yeah.
never know.
Yeah.
He's not setting off any red flags to his neighbors. He probably takes part in the PTA.
And his trophy case is pretty cool.
I was just gonna say, I love I love the little detail under each mask, just little
His
tokens
little
that they take.
trophies.
He has the photos,
Yeah.
and I love that you never see his face.
Yeah.
I love that.
Because he could be anyone.
Was there plans to do more? Is there plans to do more?
I mean, if it suddenly becomes a cult hit, maybe in 20 years we can. It made just enough money to be profitable, but CBS Studios died, and I don't know, I can't remember who acquired. So I mean, I think it belongs to Paramount currently, which is also now falling apart.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where the rights keep moving around, and it didn't make enough money that it's like a no-brainer for a sequel. But we could, if it becomes a cult hit, every year my royalty checks go up from 30 cents to like $1,500
Ooh.
after Halloween.
Yeah.
So people are definitely watching it around Halloween.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So give it another decade of becoming a cult
You know,
hit. Bex is ready,
Yeah.
Greg's ready, I'm ready.
That's
Gail's
awesome.
ready, you know.
So you
But I mean, because
do it
you could,
anytime. Yeah.
So you're
You could do it.
confirming the cast wants to come back, the director wants to come back, and you want to
everyone
come
would
back.
love to, but the people, whoever owns it, needs to see a lot more money come in before they let it happen.
Yeah.
Fair.
I am trying to get the book rights though, so I can at least write book sequels.
Do it.
That's
That'd be amazing.
That's a lot. Again, getting people to care to
Yeah.
even look it up because
Right.
it didn't make enough money is a trick.
No, it's a great seasonal movie. It's really fun to watch, and I think I'm going to watch it every year because it does
Aw,
give you
thank
that
you.
haunt vibe. It's really just for people who love haunts. It's
Thank you for contributing to my son's ramen fund.
You're welcome.
when he's in college.
You're very welcome.
Add this to your on Halloween movie list for movies that are about the time of year you are watching, because horror is year round, but haunts are once a year.
Haunts are haunts, baby.
That is our episode today for Hellfest. And thank you for listening. If you want to know more about Seth, we thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Where,
It was so much fun.
where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, Twitter, sadly, is where I'm probably most active.
X.
Or scarywriter.com if you're interested in the book. And that also has links to the free Substack that has like writing tips and links to the Twitter and stuff. Otherwise, yeah, that's sadly where I'm mostly active.
That's okay.
What's your handle there?
It's just my name. Just Seth M. Sherwood. Is it my full name? Let's see
We'll
what my
insert
Twitter
it.
handle is. It is just my name, Seth M. Sherwood.
There we go.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to check out our Patreon where we have longer, uncut, messier versions. We also have a lot more bonus content there. You can find our short form reviews on TikTok and Instagram and longer video episodes on our YouTube. So subscribe, smash the bell. You know the drill.
But
That's it.
until then, sweet screams, everybody.
And whatever you do,
Don't fall asleep first.
As you go through the haunt. Is that the theme song?
Yes.
Hellfest. It's like Fright Night.